Okay, I am back. I am waking up, and we are going to pick right back up where we left off at the end of the first mini lecture with the code book. So we reviewed how to write one, and then I walked you through, hopefully in a pretty clear way, this one, and we dug into it, just laying out the rules or a system to follow when coding information about individual survey respondents, and particularly coding information that included their gender, their age in the context of year or operationalized as year of birth, and their GPA. When you put that information in clearly and carefully with one row for each observation and one column for each variable, you get a data set. And you always write the codebook first so that you have a plan to follow to input the data systematically and validly and reliably. And then when you want to publish your research and other people want to look at and extend your research, you have a way for them to do that validly and reliably as well. Okay. The next thing to know is that once we've collected the data, we put them into databases or data sets. And even if we have qualitative data, we may still want to code them and turn them into variables. In the database, the characteristics that we've collected data on from our samples are laid out by each observation through these variables and are given numeric values. So in other words, these are the data that we produce when we follow the rules set by the codebook on the previous slide. It's about taking your verbal information, your information that's written in letters and words, and translating it into numbers. Right? Keeping the meaning, just like when you translate from one language to another, it is one language to another, but you're translating it from letters to numbers. So we have the individual survey respondents' names, but we don't want those names in our data set for all of the ethical reasons that we've talked about before, right? And so instead, we give each respondent a unique numerical identifier. 001 for the first survey we could, 002 for the second, 003 for the third, and so on. Each respondent is an observation, so each respondent gets their own row, which begins with their own special number that we just gave them. And then the second cell in the row records the respondent's gender. We saw what these numbers meant in the codebook, right? 1 for female, 2 for male, and 3 for non-binary. And then the third cell, that's the year each respondent was born. If down the road we want to convert this to age, we can just subtract the year they were born from the current year, right? So 2020 minus 1998 equals 22 years old, for example. So we talked, I know, a couple of mini lectures ago, in a previous week of this module, about why we would collect age by year of birth. And this is sort of seeing that in practice. You can get lots of information out of year of birth, but if you ask people to put themselves in an age group, you wouldn't be able to get as specific. Okay, and then the final cell is the respondent's GPA, which we got from student records. So we know that this specific respondent has this specific gender, this specific birth year, this specific GPA. Even though the information comes from two different sources, it's all about this one person. So it all goes into this one observation. And we keep doing this person by person and row by row until we have coded all of our surveys. And then if you take a step back, you'll see that you've got a row for each observation and a column for each variable, for gender, for age, for GPA, and that's your data set. Now, the numeric values for each of these variables, these can be characterized as having particular levels of measurement. And we need to understand the levels of measurement in order to determine what kind of statistical tests we're going to apply to our data and then how to interpret those results. So if you take a big step back from this is a data set, this is how you build it, this is a code book, this is why it's important and what it looks like, probably in the other way order, right? Here's a code book, here's how you build it, here's the data set you produce when you follow the rules laid out in the code book, right? From that to how we design surveys, and step even farther back out to what a research design is, you start to sort of remember why this matters, right? So if we go back to the high level view, it's all about taking a research question that you very much care about, developing a theory that produces hypotheses, and then you want to test those hypotheses. And measuring these data is about getting the variables you need to get valid, reliable insightful, informative tests of those hypotheses. And so the next step, once we're done with getting our data sets, is going to be to use the data sets to test the hypotheses. Those are statistical tests. And in order to do useful statistical tests, in order to conduct useful statistical testing, we need to understand levels of measurement. So that's where we're going to pick up with the next mini lecture, which is the last one for this week. And it's also, by the way, the last one for Module 4. So have a good whatever period of time it is between now and when you watch the final mini lecture, and I will see you then.